Peace and blessings. Peace and blessings. Thank you for joining us for our annual event of Get on the Bus. I'm Rosalind Hunter, and my sister is Angela Woodson Bryce, and we are co-presidents for Tradition Keepers, Black Storytellers of Western New York. However, before I proceed, I would like to ask permission of my elders to continue. Thank you. If I may just take a few minutes to tell you a little about Tradition Keepers. Tradition Keepers came into existence in 1995. Our co-founders are Karima Amin and Sharon Holly. Tradition Keepers are also affiliates of NABS, National Association of Black Storytellers. Our organizational goal is to promote, preserve, and perpetuate the magic of African Americans and African American oral. You know, storytelling is the art and tradition of passing on folk tales, family histories, ghost stories, etc., from one generation to the next. Again, we want to say welcome and thank you for participating with us. For this Get on the Bus, I want to share with you the concept of Get on the Bus was brought to the Tradition Keepers by our co-founder, Sharon Holly, after seeing a similar performance from another affiliate at the National Association of Black Storytellers National Convention. This year, our TK's virtual presentation of Get on the Bus continues for 20 years of our mystery story crawl in conjunction with Juneteenth 2020 festival season. Thank you again for your past participation and support, for your present, and we look forward to seeing you in the future. Thank you. Angela?
We're going to pour libation, and I'll read a libation statement first. We pour libations for our ancestors who rest in the valley of the dead. God will witness our spiritual ritual and acknowledge it with adoration. As you do for your forefathers, your descendants will do for you. Honor begets honor. And the theme of libation, we pour today for the spirits of those who've transitioned and paved the way with their blood and tears, courage and tenacity for our progress made thus far. Please speak your loved ones' names as we pour. Ashe.
May we always remember our ancestors with reverence and love, and may they share with us their wisdom and strength as we seek to continue to preserve the great heritage they have bestowed upon us. May we all say together, Ashe.
And now we would like to introduce you to Joy Gottlieb, our mistress of ceremony, who will guide us along with our virtual family consisting of Grandma, Grandpa, and their precocious little daughter, Keisha, on an informative tour of local sites. Can you guess what they are today and what they may have been in the past? The theme of our venture is community rich in heritage. Enjoy.
July is finally here, and Grandpa, Grandma, and Keisha, oh, they're all ready to get on that virtual tour. It's time for Get on the Bus. Grandma even challenged Grandpa. She said, if I give you some clues, I bet you can't even guess these sites. Grandpa said, yes, I can. Well, let's see what happened. Honey, here is the first set of clues for you. Where do you think we're going first? Well, this east side location is a keeper of our history. Do you know what this site could possibly be? As a clue, it's a place that once held money too. And honey, now, figure out this site. I beg of you. Oh, Let me see here. A financial institution in the black community? Oh, I'm just racking my brain. I'm racking my mind, but nothing's coming to me. So sorry, sweetheart. I really don't know, but I guess I'll just grab my cane. Off to explore it, we'll go. Our first stop is the Juneteenth Center. That was once upon a time, it was called Liberty Bank. Now it's a vibrant community hub for which we have the Juneteenth Committee to thank.
I've written a poem specifically for this occasion, and the title of my poem is Where I'm From. The 60s civil rights MLK decade is where I'm from. Patent leather, mind your manners, bazooka, bubblegum, a hot comb, pigtail, Shirley Temple, curl whirl. I was that cinnamon tanned faced little Negro girl. Doo-wop in the driveway with gal pals from the block, completing chores and homework against the clock. Disgusting pig feet in mommy's simmering pot. Smelling of raw sewage and decomposing animal rot. Chitlins over rice that only my daddy would eat. Delicious mac and cheese and yucky fried liver meat. Violets, lemon heads, now and laters from the corner store, assassinations, moonwalks, and a Vietnam War. Daddy would say, hop in the car, let's have some fun. Hurry up, kiddies. Mommy told her daughter and son, sitting in the back seat, my precocious siblings and me, chug-a-lucking along in Daddy's well-cared-for Chevy. Daddy would give allowance to brother, sister, and me after cashing his check at Liberty Bank on Genesee. Juneteenth headquarters has taken its place. Of that old bank facade, there's hardly a trace. We dine at Woolworths, shop at Sadler's and AM&A's. Do any of you remember those long-lost carefree days? Off to the big round wading pool in Humboldt Park, we'd frolic all day but leave well before dark. To enjoy the scenic tree line, Humboldt Parkway, the black residents there prayed it would stay. A beautiful haven torn out without their consideration, replaced by the 33 that caused inner city mutilation. The chagrin of our house purchased instead of a pet, consoled with a canopy bed and yellow shag carpet. The autograph cast that healed my brother's broken arm, my folks' attempts to shield us from bad, hurt, and harm. Our backyard weeping willow that never wept for me. Whippings meant breaking a switch from that sad-looking tree. But I was a good girl who obeyed and listened well, unlike my older brother who dwelled in whip ya butt hell. My world was Crayola-colored, viewed through rose-tinted glasses. Prayer, kin, and friends softened tragedies like smooth molasses. Catastrophic current events served up like cod liver oil rations. Our parents were role models and disciplinarians. We never looked upon them as being our friends. I recall Daddy would yell, "Y'all kids, come see." We knew it meant he'd seen a black person on TV. Scampering to spy a dark face before too late, just to glimpse another, how long will we have to wait? Clear rainbow film transformed our black and white TV. Back then, color television required years of technology. Beautiful Dorothy Dandridge and dapper Mr. Poitier both have blazed trails for the black achievers of today. I love Diane Carroll as Julia and Corey, her cute son, and Eartha Kitt, who played the best Catwoman. Here I am digressing. This ain't about TV. It's about life in Buffalo and jogging your memory. Like church on the Sabbath in my homemade mini dress, polished Goodwill shoes as part of my Sunday best, hopscotch, double dutch, rhyming songs with hand clap, voicing my extensive wish list on white Santa Claus's lap. Coming home at lunchtime for a homemade hot plate, the bruised fanny I endured because I never learned to skate. Sneaking out with Ma's blessings after Daddy said no. He'd keep us forever as children, but Ma wanted us to grow and go. The Juneteenth parade down Black Main Street called Jefferson, fire hydrant folly, and the ice cream man created summer fun. Jim Jones, son of Sam, and the Atlanta child killing spree, and a racial slur that came as a slap in the face to me. Being called the N-word and feeling the most profound hate, because someone taught this insult to a white, clueless classmate. What our spice-colored skin causes me and mine to endure from this disease called racism, which seems to have no cure. I had a career in civil rights, and now it's reflected in my poetry. What doesn't destroy you makes you strong, but seemingly never free. Now in 2021, with the murders, demonstrations, and COVID insanity, we're often transported back to a 1960s racism-fueled reality. Thank you.
I was born in 1960 in Pinellas County, Florida. Although I was the only child of Ernest and Gwen Williams, I grew up with a huge extended family in a very tight-knit community. I always had people to play with. My neighbors all knew me. My mother would tell me, if you go and act up, I'm not gonna ask them to come tell me, they're gonna handle you. I remember talking to some of the elders in my neighborhood and hearing stories about how they ended up in Florida. Some of those were happy stories and some of them were sad. But I learned about my ancestors. I had one relative who lived way up north, my grandfather. One day, we're sitting having dinner with my mother and my father, and they had a really peculiar look on their face. It was a look like there was something that was bothering them that they wanted to say, but behind that was a little bit of excitement. I didn't say nothing because kids we didn't question our parents. My father leaned back and he said, "Marlon, your mama and I got something to tell you." "What, Da?" He said, "You know how Daddy Bill lives way up north in New York?" "Yeah, Da." He said, "Well, I think we going way up north." I said, "We're going to visit?" He said, "No, baby. We're going to move way up north to New York." I thought he was joking. And when I saw the look on his face, I knew it wasn't a joke. My little heart just started beating and beating and beating. All I knew was all my people, all my family, and all my community in Florida. What was I going to do way up north? I didn't know nobody. I didn't have any family except my grandfather. He was really cool, but he couldn't take the place of all those other people that I had around me. And all those people who made me feel welcome and surrounded me with love and knowledge. But I knew that my parents had made up their mind. And I said, but Dad, Mom, what am I gonna do? I won't have a chance to get up and stay at Granny's and get up and make pound cakes with her on Sunday. I won't get a chance to run around and climb up on top of the school and climb in the mango trees and pick mangoes with Faye and Frank and Ronnie and them. I won't have a chance to go fishing down by the swamps. We won't be able to go crabbing. My mother looked at me and she said, I know, baby, but there are things you're gonna do in New York. I stopped talking because I knew there was nothing I could say and there was nothing I could do. I walked around sad for a while. I knew I was gonna miss my favorite teacher, Miss Lily. I knew that I was gonna miss my old neighbor across the street, Miss Flowers. But there was nothing I could do. So my family and I boarded a Greyhound bus and we took that long trip up north to New York. Now, when they said New York, I was thinking New York City, because that's all I knew. I didn't know nothing about Buffalo. And when we got here, I didn't see like orange trees, I didn't see lemon trees, and I certainly didn't see no mango trees. Everybody had shoes on. In Florida, we got up and we put some Vaseline on our legs and we ran outside and played with no shoes on unless we was going to Webb City uptown. Anyway, we got to Buffalo and I just did not like it. Oh, stupid Buffalo. They ain't got no mango trees. Shoot, why anybody want to be here? They have to wear them old heavy boots and them big old coats. You can't breathe in that stuff. I was very lonely. And we finally moved into a neighborhood on the east side. One of the first people that I met was a gentleman. His name was William Cooper. And Mr. Cooper was our upstairs neighbor. I came home from school one day and he was sitting on our front porch and he had an easel and had paints and he was painting and I'm thinking, I'm home for lunch. Why ain't this man at work? I didn't say nothing, no. I walked up on the porch and he introduced himself. He said, I'm your neighbor, Mr. Cooper. And I must have had this look on my face because he said, you want to know what I'm doing? I said, yeah, you didn't have to go to work. He said, this is my work. I looked at him like he done lost his mind. Mr. Cooper said, come here, let me show you something. And when I stepped around that canvas, I saw these beautiful images of African people, men, women, and children, dancing, singing, and praising their ancestors. They had their hands held up to God. They were just happy. They were sharing their stories. And I said, why you draw that? He said, because I see the stories. I've heard the stories from my mothers and my fathers and my grandparents. And I put them on canvas so that I can teach everyone else about our heritage. Anyway, as it turned out, Mr. Cooper was the first one who really told me a story. And he told me those stories through his art. As time went on, Buffalo didn't seem so weird after all, because after I moved into a community and I realized that the people in that community were just like the people in Florida. We had some of the same traditions. We sang some of the same songs. We had some of the same old sayings. We had some of the same beliefs. We dressed alike. We ate a lot of the same things. We had the same rules. Respect your elders. Yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. I started feeling like, hey, maybe I do belong. In our community, we took care of each other. And I would go and talk to the older people in the neighborhood, and they would tell me some of the same stories that my family told me about their ancestors and how they ended up coming way up north to New York. Things didn't seem so weird. I even made some really good friends. after they stopped picking at me because I talk Southern, I walked in the store one day and said, "Would y'all give me a soda water?" They looked at me and laughed. "What is a soda water?" I pointed, and he said, "You mean a pop?" I ain't know, a pop? No, I want a soda water. Eventually, I got it. Eventually, not only did I have a community, but eventually, I had a whole new family. They were people that I did not share blood with, but they loved me, they nurtured me, they pushed me forward, just like I was a blood relative. As I grew up, my family grew, my community grew, and I was happy in that old Buffalo. Eventually, I got a job as a young woman, my first job at 14. I went to my godparents' house right up the street on Kilhoffer, and I started walking. I had to show them my first paycheck. I started walking down Genesee Street with purpose, my head up, my little chest out. I was so proud. I stopped at this big building on the corner of Genesee and Moselle. I opened them doors, and when I looked in, I saw all these people who looked just like me. They were paying mortgages, they was cashing checks, they were buying bus tokens, they were putting in to have loans. And I walked up, I stood in that line, which was right about here. And when I got up in the front of that line, the young lady said, "Can I help you, ma'am?" And I said, "Yes." And I showed her my check. And she said, "What can I do for you?" I said, "You could give me some bus tokens so I could get to work, and you could cash this check, but you need to open me an account." That building was this building where Juneteenth is right now today. As our community has changed and its needs have changed, we continue to change with it to meet our needs. We continue to nurture each other. We continue to pass on our heritage. We continue to nurture and show each other love. We continue to teach each other lessons and learn from one another. I am so proud to be a member of the TK of Western New York, to be able to share some of my stories. As a 14-year-old girl, I walked into this building and realized that I was still with my people, and they were still nurturing me. And as a woman of certain age now, it's a pleasure to be here and to be able to do the same thing for generations to come. Thank you.
Honey, are you ready for the next set of clues? All right, we're on our way to the second stop. Here we go. Listen carefully. We're off to a site demolished in 1961 where sports figures and fans had so much fun. Its function, well, it's taken a 360-degree turn. And now this is a place of lessons where children learn. I got it. It's the old rock pile. Yes, it is the old rock pile. Now that's a long lost name where the Buffalo Bills played and many of their football games. No, you old fool. That ain't what I mean. You're in a whole different Buffalo scene. It's Offerman Stadium, when in 1924, the East Side Ballpark first opened its doors, becoming several schools for learning. Well, you know, that's dear to my heart. First Woodlawn Junior, Buffalo Traditional, and now Academy of Performing Arts.
I'm standing at the site of Offerman Stadium in Buffalo, New York. The crowd noise was building as a 6'4", 240-pound African American first baseman for the Buffalo Bisons came up to bat. As he got ready to hit the ball, he held it in his left hand, the bat in the left hand, and when the ball hit the bat, the crowd in the audience lift their heads up and up and up, waiting for the ball to fall. But that ball went past center field, it went past the stands, and ended up hitting a house on Woodland Avenue. While when Luke Easter rounded the bases, all you could hear the crowd say was, "Luke! Luke! Luke!" It sounded like they were booing, but they were really cheering on their hero. Now, Luke Easter wasn't born in Buffalo. Luke Easter was born in 1915 in Jonestown, Mississippi. He came to Buffalo in 1956 after he had played with several of the Negro baseball leagues in the country. When he came to Buffalo, he lived in an area not far from here. He lived on Northland Avenue. That house is still there, a beautiful white home trimmed in pink. When Luke Easter got here and he hit that home run on June the 14th, 1957, it made history. That was the longest home run that had ever been hit in Offerman Stadium, and people still talk about it today. Now, during the time when Luke was here, in addition to playing baseball, he opened up his own Luke Easter Sausage Company. He had 2 brands of sausage, hot and extra hot. When he left Buffalo, he played for a while in Rochester, and then after that, he moved to Cleveland, Ohio, where he played ball in Cleveland for a while. Now, when Luke played in Buffalo, he was the first African-American baseball player since Frank Grant had played for the Bisons in 1888. So there had only been 2, Frank Grant and Luke Easter. So when Luke got to Cleveland, he worked in baseball for a while and then he retired. And in the later parts of 1970, 78, 79, he worked as a union steward. Everybody knew that Luke was responsible for taking the money to the banks on a certain day, cashing some payroll checks to give to men who couldn't get to the bank before the time closed. But on one day in 1979, Luke went to the bank with the payroll and he was robbed. Ordinarily, he would have had a police escort, but that day there was none. And 2 men jumped out and Luke tried to defend them with the pistol that he carried, but it was not enough. He was shot and killed in Euclid, Ohio in 1979. Thousands of people came to Luke Easter's funeral in Cleveland. They came from Buffalo, they came from Rochester, they came from all the places where they knew the name Luke Easter, who had played baseball in this particular area. So when you talk to the old timers who used to come to sit in the stadium at Offerman Stadium, the one thing they remember is that June date when Luke Easter hit the ball outside Offerman Stadium and hit a house on Woodlawn Avenue. Luke Easter is in the Buffalo Hall of Fame and the Buffalo Sports Hall of Fame. Remember his name, Lucius Luke Easter.
Many people know that Offerman Stadium is a local baseball and football park. However, how many people know that in 1961, 60 years ago, this was a place that graced the ultimate jazz concert? This old stadium, just a block away from Freddy's Donuts at Maine and Michigan, was the place where all the graceful stars of jazz came to perform. A parade of stars with the likes of Duke Ellington, Count Basie, Dizzy Gillespie, Joe Williams, Dinah Washington, and Louis Armstrong were performers, along with national and very local talented people in the jazz world. Because of the beautiful advertisement and the highlighted stars, people from all over came to Buffalo for this concert. People from local areas, different cities, and even Canada. Prices for tickets range from $2 to $5 and could be purchased at outlets locally. However, Audrey's record shops, located on Jefferson and Broadway, were also where they sold those tickets. Now, this concert was the ultimate because Offerman Stadium had to get jazzed up for this particular event. So the city brought in a top-notch bandwagon that housed a movable stage that could hold 80 musicians at one time. It had an acoustical shell with glitzy lights, and it was fantabulous. Also to boot, they borrowed from New York City stereo living, a sound system that was state-of-the-art, and this was to ensure that the audience would hear every chord struck by the Dave Brubeck Quartet and every run by Louis Armstrong's beautiful golden trumpet, and also to hear Dinah Washington's every note played and sung. This phenomenal gathering was a 2-day festival. It took place on August 20th and August 21st in 1961. Not only was this a spectacular event that brought people from all over who love jazz, but it also was an entertainment and a financial success. In addition, the monies that were earned from this were donated to the Buffalo Philharmonic Orchestra, and it garnered about 16,000 people. Now, with that being said, I could say that in addition, that the promoter said that this was the only peaceful concert during the entire tour around the country. Now, to boot, I think I could say that Buffalo hosting this, they hit it out of the park, just like Luke Easter did. And now that I'm thinking about it, I wonder if the students here at the Buffalo Academy for Performing and Visual Arts are channeling those historic jazzy vibes. Because if those music majors are, that's music to my ears.
Honey, you just not doing so well. All right, here's your next set of clues. This site wears the scars of history, back over 100 years of our ancestry. Strong leaders fought injustice there, you see, served with a generous helping of spirituality. I just can't imagine where this place would be. I guess the next teller will have to enlighten me. We'll be taking you to church, the African Methodist Bethel AME. This Episcopal house of worship is quite distinctive, as you can see.
The church has been a stronghold in the African American community. Historically, when formerly enslaved persons started their communities, they started by building a church. They would use that church for service on Sundays, and during the week, it would sometimes be used as a school. I'm standing in front of Bethel AME Church, and this church was established in 1831. It was established in downtown Buffalo on Carroll Street. At that time, it was called the Colored Methodist Society. In the time that Bethel has been in existence, they had 4 different location moves and about as many different name changes. From Carroll Street, they moved to Vine Street, and that's where it is most famously known. And at that time, they were in a frame house, and they worshiped there for about 75 years. It wasn't until 1912 that they were called Bethel AME Church. From Vine Street, they moved to Eagle, and the move was a result of urban renewal. While the church was on Vine, it was connected to William Street. And the city of Buffalo decided that it wanted to widen William because William Street is a major thoroughfare coming into and out of the city. So the congregation had to be moved, and they purchased a place on Eagle Street. And they stayed there for about 20 years. And once again, urban renewal caused them to move. Well, I'm thinking that they pretty much had enough of downtown Buffalo. And as they scouted for different locations, they came across this structure on the corner of Ferry and Michigan. And they moved here in 1953. Now, during the 1800s, Bethel and its pastors and its congregation were very active in the anti-slavery movement. As a matter of fact, they had famous figures often speak from the pulpit, and that included Frederick Douglass and William Wells Brown. Bethel continued after enslavement, promoting equality for African Americans, both locally and nationwide. As I said, the church is a stronghold in the African American community. And because of Bethel's community, it withstood 4 different moves, and today it still stands 190 years later. Tradition Keepers has been holding the Get on the Bus for a number of years, and one of our locations that we always go to is a church in the city of Buffalo. One of our tellers, Yvonne Harris, Big Mama Boo, always told at a church. Big Mama Boo is strong in her faith, and she would often bring biblical characters to life in her storytelling. I'm going to tell at this time one of her signature stories, and it's called The Perfect Heart. In the middle of the town square stood a young woman, and she was bragging to everyone about her perfect heart. It had no nicks, no tears, it was bright, it was shiny, and it kept a perfect rhythm. Every single day, she would go to the marketplace, stand in the middle, and brag about her perfect heart. Well, one day, an old woman came to the market to get her weekly rations, and she noticed a crowd over in a distance,
and she made her way over there, and she heard the beating of the young woman's heart. And she saw the young woman telling everyone about her perfect heart. The old woman thought, this child doesn't know what she's talking about. And she made her way through the crowd. She said, baby, yes, your heartbeat is strong. Your heart looks perfect. But let me show you my heart. And the old woman pulled out her heart, and it had nicks, and it had scratches, and it had lumpy places, and it even had holes. The young girl, she couldn't believe it. She laughed. Oh, woman, what are you talking about? Look at your heart. It's all beaten up with holes and tears and lumps and bumps. Ah, baby, let me tell you about my heart. You see these nicks and these scratches? Those are places where my heart was broken. You see these holes in my heart? Those are places I gave my heart. I gave my love, and it wasn't returned. Ah, but my favorite part of my heart are these lumps and these bumps, where I gave a piece of my heart and someone reached in and gave a piece of their heart that was too big to fill that hole, too much. So it created the lumps and the bumps. The young woman looked at the old woman and she understood. And as she looked at the old woman, she just instinctively reached for a piece of her heart, took it and put it into one of the holes in the old woman's heart. And tears streamed down her face. The old woman in return reached in, took out a piece of her heart and put it in that hole that the young woman's heart now held. And the two embraced each other, and the crowd looked upon them because, see, they understood now too. And the old woman and the young woman walks off into the marketplace, each one holding the other, one giving love and knowledge, the other receiving love and knowledge. And I tell this story in honor of Yvonne Harris, Big Mama Boo.
Oh, honey, I thought you knew your local history. You're not doing very, very good at all. Well, on this next site that I'm going to tell you about, there was once a company providing dairy services for the African American community. Based on my research, though, there was something else I did find. Do any East Side hotels come to your foolish old mind? Oh, I know this one. I know it. It was a milk factory. Yes, sweetheart, you can't always stump me. Grandma, can you please stop calling Grandpa an old fool? He said he figured it out. I think that's pretty cool. Listen now, baby. I don't call Grandpa a fool for condescending reasons. He's a pro at April fooling during April Fool's season. But according to my research, this was not a milk factory, but the Cold Springs Hotel, and later the hub of NFT. But now, for your visual pleasure, we take you to the wall where Albright Knox commissioned portraits proudly standing tall.
Usually, for Get on the Bus, I tell a fable or a folk tale related to a theme. This year, I'm standing here in front of Buffalo, New York's Freedom Wall, and I'm standing in front of the portrait of a woman that I have admired since my teenagehood. This is Fannie Lou Hamer. I'm happy to say that I'm a part of the Albright Knox Art Gallery's Public Art Committee, so I knew about the Freedom Wall even before the community knew about it. But then I became a part of the communities committee to choose who would be portrayed on this wall. We've got 28 notable African American, Jamaican American men and women who have made outstanding contributions to this nation and to the world. And not only that, they are sterling examples of people who fought hard to make sure that everyone received civil rights, especially those people of African descent. Fannie Lou Hamer was born on October 6, 1917. So she's from my mother's generation. But I followed her story from the time I was, I think, either a junior or a senior in high school when Fannie Lou Hamer expressed the need and the right to take a seat at the National Democrat Convention in Atlantic City. But her story goes back. Right. I did say she was born in 1917, and her grandparents were enslaved people, and her mother and father were sharecroppers. Fannie Lou describes that as being just one tiny little step above enslavement, because those who owned us still owned us, paid us less than nothing, and then overcharged us for rent of a little piece of land and a shack of a house and for some tools and other supplies. She grew up poor, but she remembered that her mother was the one who expressed the greatness of blackness, because she would ask her mother, why do they hate us so much? Why do those white people hate us so much? And her mother would tell her, don't worry about what they hated, just concern yourself about understanding and respecting yourself. She remembers when her mother bought her a black doll and how excited she was about that. And she understood her beauty and she understood her power. As a result of that, she started doing some work in her own community in Sunflower County, Mississippi. Now that was a county that the KKK ruled with an iron fist. People have often said Fannie Lou Hamer was fearless, but she's more often said, I wasn't fearless. Nope, I was scared. KKK had it over all of us. But I learned early on that if I was sure that my courage was bigger than my fear, I'd be all right. If I was sure that my faith in God was bigger than my fear, I'd be all right. Reminds me of some songs that we have in our history and our culture, like a change is gonna come and ain't no stopping us now, because Fannie Lou Hamer was unstoppable. In spite of being beaten, in spite of being discriminated against on a daily basis, and in spite of knowing that her people would always have to struggle, and forever display their power and their beauty and their resilience. There's a poem that I often turn to, and I'm turning to it right now as I think of Fannie Lou Hamer, and that is that poem by Langston Hughes called Still Here. It says, I've been scarred and I've been battered, my hopes the wind done scattered,
Snow has frizzed me, sun has baked me. Looks like between them they done tried to make me stop laughing, stop loving, stop living. But I don't care, I'm still here. And every morning when Fannie Lou woke up, that's what she said, I'm still here. And she sang a song too that her mother taught her, and oftentimes sang it publicly. In fact, she sang it in 1963, 64, I'm not sure of the year now, of the National Democrat Convention, when she had hoped that she and members of her Mississippi Freedom Democrat Party would have a seat at the convention. But when she arrived, after traveling many miles, there was no seat for them there. And she and her group went outside, stood in a circle, prayed, and then sang "This Little Light of Mine." I gotta say it again, "This Little Light of Mine." That was her song. She sang it frequently and she sang it publicly. Even sang it in Guinea, West Africa, when she traveled there later on. But I should tell you, Fannie Lou was beaten to the point where she had kidney failure. She was beaten to the point where she was blinded in one eye. She was beaten to the point where she lost the movement of one of her hips, and so she walked with a limp. But none of that stopped her. She believed that we should keep on keeping on and always believe in our strength and our beauty and our power. So she let her light shine wherever she went and encouraged others, black, white, rich, poor, big or small, to do the same. As vice chair of the Mississippi Freedom Democrat Party, she made sure that her people had at least 2 seats at the convention. Others of her people were there, but they weren't allowed to sit. They could only be presented as invited guests, which would mean they wouldn't have a vote at the convention, but at least they were there. And that was a first. It was President Lyndon Johnson who had hoped that he would have a press conference that would intervene when she was arguing about the importance of her having a seat at the table for black people. But his plan backfired. All of the networks around the world showed Fannie Lou Hamer and her people outside that convention center in Atlantic City, standing in that circle, praying together and singing together, "This Little Light of Mine." Some of you think I'm about to sing, but I'm not. I'm not going to sing. Storytelling is my thing. Singing is not, and I openly admit that. I think it's real important that we look at Fannie Lou Hamer as someone who exemplifies all of the resilience and fortitude that we all should. In spite of our negative history, we have prevailed. Those who brought us here to the Western Hemisphere never expected us to truly survive and to build strong families, but we did. Even after being beaten, Fannie Lou prevailed. Even after losing her position on that sharecropping plot that she and her husband, Harry Paps Hamer, owned, even after she was evicted from that plot of land, even after she was evicted from the shack she didn't own, but where she stayed, it didn't matter. She moved in with friends, and she moved around from this friend's home to another friend's home until it became too dangerous for them. And then eventually, she left Sunflower County, Mississippi, to a place where she could be safer and her friends and family could be safer. But she understood that her life was always in danger and she would have to rise above it and always fight for her people, for the people, and for the love of life. At the convention, she asked the question, "What is this, America? Is it really the land of the free and the home of the brave?" I don't think we are, but I think that we can be. But it's going to take a lot of work and it's going to take a lot of love. It's interesting to me that some of the things that Fannie Lou fought for and worked for during the 50s, 60s, and early 70s are the same things that we're fighting for now. She was fighting for the right to vote. Even after the right was granted to black people, in her state of Mississippi, it was forbidden. In fact, things were so bad in Mississippi, there was even a law that said poor black people shouldn't have children. Well, Fannie Lou had been beaten to the point where she couldn't have children, but she and her husband adopted 2 little girls, and they grew a family from that. I think it's real important that we know and understand that we should be like Fannie Lou Hamer. You see her on the portrait with her fists raised, representing power. That's what we should do. We should always represent our power, always represent our strength, and always represent our love for each other. Let's keep it moving. Let's keep on keeping on. Oh, that's a story I could have told. Well, I didn't, but I told Fannie Lou's story, and that's a story about someone who kept it moving. Someone who just said, I got to keep on keeping on. And Fannie Lou Hamer is the one who famously said, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I am too. Thank you for listening.
At the tour's conclusion, little Keisha was feeling mighty great. Her informative grandma had brought her up to date. She had learned a lot on this trip called Get on the Bus. She just giggled at those old lovebirds, reminiscing with playful fuss. Grandma joked about Grandpa not being equally smart, but Keisha could see the love Grandma felt for him in her heart. What Grandma said about him, April fooling, could that possibly be true? But Grandpa didn't complain, and obviously the sentiment wasn't new. Grandpa bantered with Grandma about her memory and being wise. He'd gaze with admiration at her with his pleased and love-lorn eyes. Then Grandpa told little Keisha she should never leave this place like so many of the young people who relocated from Buffalo without a trace. Keisha said she couldn't possibly promise. However, quite possibly, she'd remain local and carry on the family's Buffalo legacy. With pride, Keisha asked Grandma, teach me to research and trace. It's fun to see women like her be so knowledgeable about a place. Grandma confessed that griots are tradition keepers who master a fine art for telling the stories that keeps tradition alive. And we have each other much wisdom to impart. Keisha said she loved to get on the bus, especially how Grandma just put Grandpa to the test. Then she hugged them both and smiling and said, I'm blessed with grandparents who are the best.
We are Tradition Keepers, Black Storytellers of Western New York. We are Tradition Keepers, Black Storytellers of Western New York. We are Tradition Keepers, Black Storytellers of Western New York. We praise Tradition Keepers, Black Storytellers of Western New York. We honor Tradition Keepers, Black Storytellers of Western New York. We nurture Tradition Keepers, Black Storytellers of Western New York. We praise, we honor, we nurture.